Hi everyone! Today I'm going to talk about 9 kick-ass ladies. So let's get straight into it. Aelin Galathynius is a fae, and she has powers to control fire, and even without her magical powers, she is still very strong because she can wield all sorts of weapons like swords and bow and arrows and even like axes. And I think what makes her a strong character is that she is a royalty, but her country has been destroyed by enemies when she was very young, so she sort of ran away and tried to survive. But in the beginning, she tried to run away from her heritage. She didn't want to be queen, she didn't want to save her country, she just wants to survive. But as the series progresses, you see her facing her fears and trying to form an army from scratch and to save her country. So I think she's been through a lot. She's been through pain and torture and the loss of loved ones, but despite it all, she still kept fighting. And she's only a 19-year-old teenager, so that is just crazy. And if you asked me like 5 years ago who I thought the most badass female character was, I would definitely say Aelin Galathynius. But now that I've read more YA and more books in general, I actually find her character to be a little bit generic, because there are actually a lot of female characters like her who's just very sassy and very beautiful physically and very powerful. And so as I've read more books, I found that Aelin isn't as unique as I thought in the past, but I'm still putting her on this list because she's one of the first female characters that really wowed me and made a deep impression on me. Celie from The Color Purple is one of those non-generic kick-ass ladies in my opinion, because when you talk about like a strong female character, she's probably not the first one who would come to mind, but I think she is one of the strongest female characters ever because first of all, she is an African American who lived during the time of severe racism. Like, even though slavery was already abolished, African Americans basically had no rights, and being a woman as well, she just faced this double oppression. And in the beginning, she's just brutally oppressed by her father and her husband, and she sort of just passively accepts all this aggression. But as the book progresses, she finally stood up for herself, and there's this epic quote that you've seen earlier on when she stood up for herself. She acknowledged her weaknesses. She knows that she's poor, she's black, she's ugly, but then she says, "But I'm here." And I think that's a really powerful sentence, because it just shows that as long as you exist, there's always a chance, and there's always, you can always make a change. Lucy Pevensie is from the Chronicles of Narnia, and she is the youngest of the 4 siblings. And I think most of you must be quite familiar with the Chronicles of Narnia. And in this story, she's the first of the siblings to discover Narnia and, go into the wardrobe and see this beautiful place. So even though she's just a little girl, she tries to do whatever she could to fight against the White Witch. And this was a very big contrast to her brother Edmund, who got carried away by the lies of the White Witch. And also when her oldest siblings, Peter and Susan, started doubting, and they were thinking like, we should just save Edmund and just leave Narnia, Lucy was the only one who was determined and said, no, we have to stay here and we have to fight for Narnia and save the people here and the animals here. So in this way, you can see that Lucy is very selfless and very courageous. She never thinks about her own well-being. All she thinks about is saving the people she loves. And also in the second book, Prince Caspian, when they returned to Narnia, Lucy was also the only one who was able to see Aslan initially. And there's this verse in the Bible that says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And as some of you must know, C.S. Lewis is a Christian, so I think the fact that Lucy, the innocent Lucy, was the only one who was able to see Aslan, it really corresponds with this verse. Like, Lucy is sort of the symbolism or the embodiment of everyone who's pure in heart, and Aslan is symbolic of God. So even though Lucy is this really young girl, she's a female character that I really, really admire. Inej Ghafa is from the Six of Crows duology, and she is a member of this gang called the Crow Club, and she is most known for her stealth. Like, she can move around almost completely silent and she cannot make herself invisible because she's really good at moving with the shadows. She's also really good at scaling walls and climbing through windows like a spider. And because of her uncanny ability of moving around unseen and unheard, this earned her the nickname of the Wraith. And I think just having this ability already makes Inej super badass, but also the other thing that I really like about her is that she is very compassionate and very kind. So actually, you know, in the gangs, people often get hardened because living conditions are hard and people often just treat you harshly, but Inej is still very gentle. She's so kind to her friends and very loyal, and her dream is to have a ship of her own to capture slave traders because she herself has been enslaved in the past. So she didn't want anyone else to face the same fate as her, and she just wanted to see justice in the world, even though she lived in a very unjust and harsh place. So I think this is what I really love about Inej. Hermione Granger is from the Harry Potter series, and I think she's probably the most well-known character in this entire video. I think I don't have to introduce her because most people already know who Hermione is. But for those of you who still want to know about her, Hermione Granger is a character in Harry Potter, and she's best friends with the main character Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. And she's also the smartest and most studious of the three. She really loves studying. She's very diligent all the time, but she's also very loyal and she always sticks with her friends. And I think Hermione has inspired so many people, especially young girls around the world, including myself, because Hermione is like very smart and very nerdy, and I am also a nerd if you can't tell. And I'm just really glad that you get someone like Hermione in literature, because I feel like in many books, you know, the smart kid is often portrayed as being very annoying and snobbish and pretentious, but Hermione is super intelligent, but she's still very loyal and humble, and she's also a very likable character. Like, I haven't really met anyone who hates her, so I think it's very special, and I'm really glad that, you know, smart kids can be portrayed in this way, and like Hermione, and not like a snobbish, annoying kid. And I think that's just very special. As opposed to Hermione Granger, I think Trudi Montag is probably the least well-known character on this list, because she's from the book Stones from the River by Ursula Heggie, but I don't really hear anyone talking about this book, and even on Goodreads there's like very little rating and reviews on this book. So I couldn't even find a picture of her on the internet, so if you could tell, I drew that picture myself. I don't know if it looks a little bit crude, but yes, I drew it myself. Trudi is a character with dwarfism, and I think this is very special because I've never read about any story that talks realistically about someone with dwarfism. Like, the only times I would encounter dwarves is like in fantasy, when they're like, you know, dwarves like Gimli and the Lord of the Rings, or, you know, the Seven Dwarves and Snow White. And I think that's an issue because dwarves are often either fantasized, like put into fantasies, or they're treated as like oddities or freaks. And there's rarely any literature that deals with them as human. I think Stones from the River did just that. So Trudi Montag is someone with dwarfism, but she is just as much human as everyone else is. So she grew up in Germany during the times of World War I and II. She lived in a really harsh time, and she also struggled a lot with self-identity because of her condition. You know, people called her names and they didn't want to be friends with her. So she was quite isolated as a child. This isolation kind of caused her to become very perceptive. She's very observant, and she could almost tell by, you know, other people's expressions what they're thinking, and she spends a lot of time just, you know, looking at people and observing them and trying to guess what they're thinking inside. And she realized that even though she looks different on the outside, she's very physically different, everyone is sort of, you know, everyone is different in some way or another, and everyone has something that is odd or weird that they don't want to let anyone else know. And I think this is a really powerful message that this book is trying to tell you, that everyone is weird in some way or another. It's just some people's are more apparent than others. And also, there's one part in this book where Trudi hugs her own body, and claims her body as her own. And I also think this is a very powerful message, because I think everyone, especially girls, have probably struggled with self-image at one point in their life or another. And for Trudi, who has dwarfism, this struggle with self-identity is all the more severe. But the fact that she claimed her body as her own, no matter what her body looks like, whether it's fat or slim or tall or short, she just knows that this is my own body and I will love it. I think this is a very important message for everyone, because, you know, we only have one body, and we can choose to hate our bodies, but we can also choose to claim our bodies as our own.
Cassie Logan is a character from Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and like Celie, she is also an African American who grew up during the time of racial discrimination and racial segregation. So this book follows Cassie as she enters primary school, and she started noticing the injustices in her society. How, white people are treated differently from black people, and how she was very angry about the fact that the white schools always get brand new textbooks, and while the black schools can only get those really battered copies of textbooks that the white schools no longer want. And she was really infuriated about it, and she told her mother about it, but her mother sort of just told her that that's just the way it is, child. That's just how our world works. You sort of see how Cassie discovers this harsh reality of life and how she responds to injustice. So I really recommend this book because you see how, young African American children deals with this injustice and how they respond to it. I don't want to spoil anything, so please just go read the book, and I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Isabelle Lightwood is from the Mortal Instruments series, and she is one of the more, generic kick-ass ladies. So she gives me similar vibes as Aelin Galathynius. Like, they're both very sassy and confident and beautiful physically, and also very physically strong. And but I think what's special about her is that she's very loyal to her family and friends. So usually she would be quite kind and nice, friendly to you, but if you mess with her friends or family, you're gonna have a hard time. And I think one of my favorite scenes of Isabelle is this part where she fought with one of the main antagonists in this series using her whip. So her Electrum whip is like her weapon of choice. She often fights with it. That scene, she took on this enemy like one-on-one, and I think that fight scene is truly epic, and I can still feel my heart racing whenever I think about that scene. So Isabelle Lightwood is also like a super strong female character that I really like. So now we're going a couple hundred years into the past, and we're going to talk about Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Back in that time period, girls are often just expected to be prim and proper so that they can one day find a suitor and get married and then have children and be a mother and then die. So basically that's not a lot to look forward to for a girl, in my opinion. But Elizabeth Bennet didn't want to conform to that. She has a mind of her own. She didn't want to just be a huaping. She doesn't want to just, get married and do nothing afterwards. So when she met the infamous Mr. Darcy, she was really infuriated by him. She found him to be very prideful, even though all the other girls are like fawning over Mr. Darcy because he's rich and very charming. But Elizabeth just feels like, no, I don't want anything to do with Mr. Darcy. But in this book, you will see how Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth's relationship unfolds. As a reader living in the 21st century, Elizabeth Bennet might not be anything special. It's just like quite normal to see a female character with a mind of her own. But I feel like in that time period, to have this strong-willed character and to have a female character that's so intelligent and witty and knowledgeable, I think that's very impactful, and that just thinking of people during that time period reading about these characters, I think that's really empowering. So that's all the characters I have for today. Please let me know who you think is the most badass of all of the 9 people I've mentioned. And if you have someone else in mind that you think is a super kick-ass lady in fiction, please do let me know or comment down below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!